Yeah, so this week we had another episode of Daredevil Born Again. I have loved the show ever since it dropped a few weeks ago. I think that they're doing the show justice. They're doing the original Daredevil show justice. They're also adding things to it, which I actually kind of really enjoy and I really like that I don't think the original series did. Like I like. Okay, we'll touch on this. The fight scenes, some of it is more CGI than the original, and I don't necessarily think that any of the fight scenes in Born Again are better than that first season 1 hallway fight. But
I have seen that fight.
yeah, they're not ever going to be as good as that, because that was, it's so different. But they are able to do a lot more. Like Daredevil's he's so much more comic accurate.
Yeah.
He's not Spider-Man, but he's swinging around the city with his billy clubs and whatnot. They're just able to do a lot more, and it's really unique to see the different styles from one show and then this one. And so honestly, to its credit, it does a very good job when it stands out on its own and it's different. I will say this episode, as much as I still love it, I want to preface by saying I loved it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was good. And for the story they're trying to tell right now, it's perfectly fine and serviceable. It's not filler by any means, but this is the worst episode of the 3 they have released so far. Okay. And that's, again, it's not a bad thing. But when I talked about this the first time, I had brought up the fact that this was originally 2 separate concepts for a show. One where it just took the original actors and put them back in their roles, but it was a complete soft reboot of the universe. And then they changed it like a few years ago to be a direct connection, a direct sequel to that original Daredevil Defenders universe world. And I love that idea, but they had already shot the majority of the show with that original concept.
So I have a question, and if you don't want to answer this because you feel like it's going to be too big of a spoiler, please do not answer it. And I don't know how familiar are you with the source material of Daredevil Born Again? Because Daredevil Born Again is the most well-known, famous Daredevil story in history. If you ask anyone a Daredevil arc who's not a huge comic book fan, that would be the only arc that anyone would be able to name. Maybe, like, I can't even think of any exceptions. Like, there's good Daredevil arcs, but this is Daredevil Born Again. That title is the most infamous arc in Daredevil history. Does this, to your knowledge of the comic book, is this a retelling of the Daredevil Born Again comic, or is this just using the title in telling a different story? Because if that's the case, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be a little disappointed, because I really wanted to see the Born Again story told.
Sure.
But
well, and I think it's tricky to say that because I haven't officially read it. I'm a nerd and I'm a comic nerd and I friggin' love Daredevil, so I know the story. I know what happens.
Yeah.
And I know enough to figure it out. But from what I know, it's about half and half. And the only reason I say that is because technically in universe, half of the Born Again story was already told within season 2 of Daredevil. And I mean that because, like, they pulled for, and this is honestly something I do like what Marvel does do, instead of pulling directly from one story, other than, like, Infinity War was purely the Infinity War story with some things shuffled around. This one is, okay, let's pull from this part of the comic book story, let's place this here, and then we can save this for another time. Again, without getting into too many spoilers, because I do want you to experience this on your own. The best way to say is it's about half and half. For what they're trying to depict of the original story, it's good. For what is original, it's still fairly good. But I think, and this is what I was gonna basically say, when they've already shot the original concept, or most of the original concept, for what they wanted for Daredevil Born Again, and then they come back now saying, hey, we want to bring back all these characters, we want it to be a sequel, at some point it's going to be a little choppy. That they're going to, you're going to see that there's stitches there's things that they've just added, and maybe it doesn't feel right to be there, even though it's really darn good. So, like, I'll say this, because he's in the trailer. Punisher comes back, and we see Frank
Yeah,
Castle again
yeah.
we see Frank Castle again in this episode, and it is by far the best scene of Daredevil Born Again so far. It's beautiful. It's to a certain degree, it's haunting.
Mhm.
Because obviously the whole point of the Born Again story, and this is from the comic, is Matt is willing to cross the line that he has always towed for himself, which is I don't kill. I
Yeah.
will not kill anybody, and he's strongly feeling this now. All these years later, after finally putting the mask aside, and the scene was so good. First up, I love John Bernthal as an actor. I think he's so good in everything he does. I'm so excited he's in Nolan's Odyssey. Not sure which character, but I'm
I
so
don't think we
happy
know
for that.
most of the characters that are in Nolan's
Well,
Odyssey
we
yet.
know
Well,
Matt
I mean, we
Damon
know the
plays.
characters, but casting
Yeah,
wise.
well, we obviously know Matt Damon's playing Odysseus, and Anne Hathaway's playing Penelope, but that's pretty much it.
Mhm.
We don't know
Well,
anything else,
and
which is
do we
fine
know
with
Tom
me.
Holland's character? Because Tom Holland is
Oh,
also one of the
yeah, he's
stars.
the son, Telemachus. He's Telemachus.
Okay. Okay.
And then we got rumors of other stuff. But anyway, I love John Bernthal.
Yeah,
I think he's
yeah.
great, and I love him as the Punisher. It is his magnum opus. He's so good in this character. He's so good in this role. And so honestly, just you could put them in a scene and it could be awful, but seeing those two characters on screen again together is just it's so cool, and I'm so happy we get that.
Yeah.
But they one up it by it actually being this really good heart to heart scene that only Frank and Matt can actually have. And I think that it's in a lot of ways it was electrifying. You're locked into the scene. In other moments where it's heartbreaking, and this is just one scene of the episode. But I thought it was really good what they did with that scene. Now the rest of the episode. That Frank Castle scene and that Matt Murdock scene was not a part of the original show. And it is very clear and it is very evident that it was thrown in there. Thrown in there enough and it gets the story by, like it still connects, but you can tell it was stitched in there. And that's how a lot of this episode feels. There's a lot of scenes that you can see were added later on. The whole point of this
Like
episode is yes,
reshoots, kind of like the one of the biggest problems that we voiced when we talked about it in the first episode of the podcast with the Brave New World, where we felt like a
yeah,
lot of the problem that they ran into was the fact that they felt the need to reshoot a lot of the episodes and kind of go
sure,
back and change and piecemeal it
sure,
together, which in my opinion, unless it's done very minimally, is if you're talking whole big like a magnum opus parts of the thing being
sure,
reshot, which was very evident in Brave New World. Unfortunately, that's where it's like, don't do that. If it's small little fixes and oh, we didn't get this scene exactly one, and let's reshoot this little scene, like that's fine.
sure.
But I guess it's a little disappointing to hear that Daredevil's
When
now
you're
running into that same issue.
when you're overhauling your entire and again, the whole point of what I said when I started with this was it's still not bad. Like I actually would still go as far as to say it's good. If you look at I hate talking about them because I don't trust them. I don't like the critic reviews on the app or the audience reviews on it. But Rotten Tomatoes, if you look at it, the score actually went up after this episode dropped. So it's still good, but there is a very clear line of this is what they were planning originally. This is what they're planning now, and sometimes it's a little awkward when it
Yeah,
matches. It's not bad, it's just awkward and you can feel it. And honestly, until season 2 hits, I think that you're probably just gonna have to deal with that the entire season for season 1, which I'm fine with, especially if they course correct it and it gets back on track and it feels like normal a normal cohesive storyline once again, which I'm perfectly fine with. That completely
yeah.
fine with that. They also made just some choices and I'm just like, yeah, it works, but I'm like, I don't want to hear "We Built This City" sung to Wilson Fisk twice over. I really don't feel the
Interesting.
need.
I'm curious to get context to that when I finally watch it. That's very interesting.
But the episode ends with a massive uh not reveal, but it's like, okay, we're building to it. We're building to that Born Again name. He's going to become Daredevil again. Wilson Fisk is going to become the Kingpin again. And it's very evident at the end of the episode that's what they're building towards. And obviously we're going to get that grand return to form. We're going to see everybody in these characters again. They're building back. It's like the whole point of The Sopranos is watching a man refuse to change. That's the whole point of the show. And that's what I love about it. And it's kind of similar here. These men say they're different. They want to try to be different. But there's always that part of them that's going to return to it. You're never going to truly be gone, and you go back to that regular form that you once had. For Matt Murdock, it's Daredevil, and for Wilson Fisk, it's being the Kingpin. As much as they both want to try to change, that's who they are deep down. And honestly, that's what I still love about Born Again, what I do think they're doing